Thank you for joining us today on our webinar discussing PLM to ERP integrations. Today's presenter is Wayne Hoyt, PLM Business Development Manager.
Thank you, Kristen. Welcome everyone to our presentation of an introduction to PLM to ERP integrations. My name is Wayne Hoyt, and I'm one of the business development managers at ITI. I've worked with PLM and related fields for over 20 years. Our hope is that we leave you with some insightful tips as you consider your PLM and ERP strategy, and that we properly introduce ourselves as trusted partners in this space so you know who you can turn to with questions. First, I'd like to give you a brief overview of ITI. ITI was founded in 1983 to foster interoperability for CAD, CAM, and CAE users, and the idea was to make CAD more readily available and more useful to larger groups of CAD content creators and consumers. Since that time, we've grown to over 140 employees with an annual revenue of more than $40 million. We have 5 offices in the US and Europe, and in 2019, we became a wholly owned subsidiary of Wipro Limited. We are data migration experts with more than 16 years experience. Our dedicated migration teams focus solely on data migration projects and have completed more than 175 production projects to date. We migrate data from legacy engineering systems like SmartTeam, EPDM, ProPDM, or unmanaged files on disk, etc., as well as all of the major PLM systems like Aris Innovator, Inovia or 3D Experience, Teamcenter, and Windchill. At ITI, we are also integration experts and the preferred solution supplier for Creo, NX, ERP, and other integrations for our partners, such as Dassault Systems, Siemens, Aris, and PTC. And speaking of integrations, let's move on to today's topic. Today's topic is an introduction to PLM to ERP integrations. And here's our agenda, starting with what is PLM? In case some of our attendees are more focused on ERP, I'll give a brief description of PLM. What is ERP? Likewise, in case some of our attendees are more focused on PLM, I'll give a brief description of ERP. Next, why share data between PLM and ERP? Here, I'll talk about the need to close the gap and share data between these two systems. Next, I'll discuss how to share data between systems, starting with the wrong way to close the gap. This is particularly important to cover, as we all know doing things the wrong way leads to a loss of productivity, loss of data, and ultimately a loss of money. Then I'll cover the right way to close the gap. In this section, I'll talk about the better way to close the gap and share data between PLM and ERP systems. Next, we'll talk about the benefits of a direct PLM integration, and here I'll discuss the benefits gained from a direct integration. And last, the wrap-up summary. I'll provide a very brief summary of what we've covered. So let's start with the basics. What is PLM? First, PLM stands for Product Lifecycle Management. The basic definition is the process of managing the entire lifecycle of a product from its inception through the engineering, design, and manufacture, as well as the service and disposal of manufactured products. And the basic purpose is that PLM integrates people, data, processes, and business systems and provides a product information backbone for companies and their extended enterprise. So that's a mouthful, but the basic idea is that PLM allows people in various facets of a company to collaborate and track the development of a given product. Okay, time for some graphics. Usually when I talk about PLM, I like to say that it's used to track and manage a product from its inception, say a drawing on a napkin, to the formal design and engineering, to the readiness for manufacturing, for example, an EBOM or engineering bill of materials. So how are products tracked? By managing a lot of data, such as CAD parts, CAD drawings, metadata, bills of materials, and other assorted documents like specifications, testing results, etc. So this leads us to our first pro tip, number 1, PLM, Product Lifecycle Management. PLM is great for managing a product's entire lifecycle from concept to production to retirement. Okay, next, what is ERP? ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. The basic definition is software used to manage day-to-day business activities such as accounting, procurement, project management, risk management and compliance, and supply chain operations and product data such as parts and BOMs. So what is the basic purpose? To manage various business processes and enable the flow of data between them. By collecting an organization's shared transactional data from multiple sources, ERP systems eliminate data duplication and provide data integrity with a single source of truth. Okay, that's a lot to take in as well, and the simplest way to say that is that ERP is like an inventory management system on steroids. And ERP has a long history of managing manufacturing-related data. So as we've already covered, PLM manages product data for conception through engineering and readiness for manufacturing. And in many cases, where PLM leaves off, ERP begins. ERP can easily manage bills of materials produced from PLM, as well as the associated parts. But it can also manage a lot more, such as inventories, manufacturing data, distribution information, purchasing records, MRP data, that's material requirements planning, and a lot more. This leads us to pro tip number 2, ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. ERP is great for managing materials-related data such as inventory, parts, and bills of materials. So why share data between PLM and ERP? Because PLM and ERP are traditionally separate systems, coordination between product design, engineering, and product manufacturing has always been disconnected. PLM and ERP each have strong specialized uses. So there's a gap between their traditional purposes, and we need to be careful that we don't lose data in that gap. Sharing data across this gap traditionally is not simple or cost-effective. We have to be aware of this gap and how to close it. We need to mind the gap. That leads us to pro tip number 3, mind the gap. Closing the gap between PLM and ERP so that nothing gets lost. Let's start our look at addressing this problem with the wrong way to close the gap. Without a direct integration between PLM and ERP systems, sharing data means using a manual process. A person or group of people exports or extracts data from one system, typically into a CSV or XML file, and typically from PLM. Then that file is then copied over to another system and loaded into a separate application, again in this case typically ERP. And this process can cause multiple problems. Duplication. Manually checking for duplicate information like part names is tedious and frequently inaccurate. Loss of data. Exporting data manually can lead to overlooked or forgotten data. Loss of time. Manual processes are slow. All of these can cause tremendous downstream problems, which leads to financial losses. Don't get me wrong, people are great, but we make a lot of mistakes, even when we think we're being careful. So let's take a look at what a manual process might look like. Here's our PLM and ERP systems, like a mainland and an island separated by a lack of connectivity, the gap between them. In this case, we have a lot of data in PLM that we need to share with ERP, but we're only going to share parts and BOMs because with a manual process, we need to limit what we share. So we get our data from PLM and bring it to ERP and load it, and then we repeat this each time we have new data, and it's slow. Load, transfer, import, load, transfer, import, load, transfer, import. Even if we get the process down, we still run the risk of errors. Now imagine that we have multiple systems and we need to repeat this process over and over for all these systems. What can we expect? That's right, we end up with a floating graveyard of errors compounded by the fact that we're trying to maintain multiple systems. And it's not just that we have errors. More importantly, we have systems and information that are out of sync. And that can cause problems in manufacturing, problems that are very costly. So this leads us to pro tip number 4, the wrong way. Manual processes are slow, limited in scope, and rely on people, which leads to errors and bad data. So what is the right way to do this? How do we better close the gap between PLM and ERP? Well, we need a direct integration between the systems. This is fast and accurate. Since it's a direct connection between systems, we're not manually processing files. And this eliminates human error, which is bound to happen whenever you repeat processes as many times as this would call for. It's bidirectional, so data is sent or created and synced between systems and not just in one direction. We can share more than just parts and BOMs. We can include things like ECOs, MCOs, catalogs, categories, manufacturing part numbers, attributes, and more. And this is scalable. We can link multiple systems. We can link multiple PLMs to a single ERP, and we can link multiple ERPs to a single PLM. So let's take a look at the right way to close the gap and start by clearing away all the debris from the wrong way. Now, when we set up our integration, we have a direct bidirectional pipeline between ERP and PLM. And this eliminates all the problems associated with the gap and other methods of sharing data. And because this is an integrated solution, we can share all kinds of data beyond parts and BOMs, like attributes, categories, catalogs, ECOs, MCOs, manufacturing part numbers, and more. And since this is a scalable solution, we can expand our integration to accommodate additional systems, in this case, additional ERP systems. Plus, we can customize the solution to be specific to each ERP or PLM system. And once we're integrated, everything is awesome. So this brings us to pro tip number 5, the right way. Direct integration allows for flexible, fast, accurate, and bidirectional transfer of data. So let's take a quick review of the benefits of a direct integration. First, it's simple. It gives users data in a format they understand, typically in the PLM interface. And it eliminates the need for users to learn multiple systems, and by that I mean both PLM and ERP. Next, it's accurate. It eliminates human error, which can occur from moving the data manually. And it includes built-in error checking and duplication elimination for all integrated systems. Next, it's scalable. We can connect to and add multiple systems, even adding more over time. We can also share most any data in a configurable and modifiable UI. And last, it's financially sound. Direct integration saves time and money by automating processes that were previously manual. And it saves money by eliminating the cost of maintenance of extra user licenses for multiple systems. And by that I mean users do not need to have access to multiple systems to get the necessary information. They can get it in one system. So this leads us to pro tip number 6, the PLM to ERP integration benefits. Direct integration is simpler, more accurate, and financially sound. It saves money. So last on our agenda is the wrap-up summary. PLM and ERP systems serve different but related purposes. A direct integration closes the gap between PLM and ERP. There's a wrong way and a right way to transfer data between PLM and ERP. And a direct PLM-ERP integration saves time, ensures accuracy, is simpler for users, and most importantly, saves money. And that leads us to our last pro tip, number 7, focus on the target. The goal of data management is making your business run better. Integrating systems always hits the target. Back to you, Kristen.
So at this time, we will hold a Q&A session. So if you do have any questions, please drop those in the questions window, and we will answer them in the order they came in. All right, so it does look like we have a few. Wayne,
Okay.
the first one is data synced with ERP visible in ERP?
Yes. The answer, if I understand your question correctly, the answer is yes. So because we're syncing bidirectionally, data that originated in PLM and is synced into ERP is absolutely visible within the ERP system as long as you have access to that system and proper training to use it.
Okay, question number 2. What kind of architecture does ICI use?
That's a good question. We use a combination of standard proprietary ITI components, meaning that these are components that are installed at every installation where we do an integration. We use published ERP and PLM system APIs, so whatever the manufacturer is or the author is for each system, we use their published APIs. We do not write our own. And we use a collection of customized use case specific code. So although we use standard, by our terms, products and standardized APIs, once we start working on a customer's installation and system, we can alter the installation to provide synchronization between systems with virtually any data that makes sense for you and for your business use cases.
Awesome. Thanks, Wayne. Next question. Can the data from ERP be shown in PLM?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, one of the primary functions of this is to do exactly that. It's probably more typical that users in PLM would want to see ERP data than the other way around. I'm saying typical though, not always. And our integrations are created with the idea that we would build a UI inside your PLM system so that users can view and access just about any data you want from the ERP system. We can also make sure that transferring and syncing data is lifecycle based. So users in PLM systems, for example, at different points in time, can allow the life cycle to synchronize data, bombs, parts, etc., between the two systems automatically. And then we also feature the ability to manually synchronize that data if so desired.
Awesome. It looks like we got a few more questions here. What is the frequency of synchronization between PLM Windchill and ERP SAP?
Well, I kind of responded to that one just a moment ago. The frequency is really based on the life cycle and something that your use case is determined. So at various points in time of the usage, you can determine when we provide, let's say, the triggers to synchronize the data between the two systems. And again, it can also be set up to be a manual process, and you can have both simultaneously. So if there are instances when you want users to manually sync data on their own for some reason, and then let's say at other points in time, let's say when new data is checked in or you create a new BOM or something of that nature, you want to automatically synchronize between ERP and PLM, then that can happen as well. So it's really dependent on your use cases and business practices as to when that occurs. It's completely up to the customer to make that determination, how they want it to work.
Okay, great. We'll take one more question and then we'll wrap up for today. This last question is, will ERP respect the permissions in PLM once integrated?
If I understand the answer correctly, I think that the answer to that is going to be yes, but I'm not sure about what permissions you might be talking about. In other words, a user cannot override the ability to sync. They can't override data in one system or another unless they have permission. So if a user does not have permissions to access ERP, they won't be able to do so from the integration. However, data may still be synchronized between the two systems because the business use case requires it regardless of the user's permission. And then, of course, users' permissions within the PLM system are still respected based on the way the system is set up. So we don't override any of that at all, but depending on the use case, the synchronization may still occur, we'll say, in the background, separate from the user's permissions because the business requires it.
All right. If anybody else has any other questions, feel free to drop those in the questions window. We will answer them after the webinar is over. I do want to thank you all for joining us today for our PLM to ERP integrations webinar. I will be sending out an email shortly with a link for you to rewatch this presentation. If you do have any questions, please feel free to use the address on the screen, info@iti-global.com, and we'll be in touch shortly. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.